Have you ever stepped into a room only to feel like you're invisible? Not because you lack presence, but because you gave it away too easily. People interrupt you, question your worth, disregard your boundaries, yet you remain composed, hoping that your kindness will earn you the respect they withhold. But here's the truth: in a world shaped more by strategy than sincerity being understood too quickly isn't a strength, it's a vulnerability. What if I told you that the more transparent you are, the more people see you coming, and in turn feel less inclined to give you the respect you deserve? Think about it. People don't fear what they can predict. They don't respect what they completely understand. In a society that applauds goodness, the real power lies in being unreadable. The power is not in being completely understood, but in being just the opposite. This isn't about losing who you are. It's about reshaping the way you move through the world. It's about trading the need for approval for a commanding presence. It's about turning down the noise and amplifying the tension. Think about what Machiavelli and the Stoics knew all too well: the quiet person, the unreadable one, the one whose actions are unpredictable, often becomes the person others watch in silence. And they don't even realize they're doing it. Have you ever wondered how some people can command fear and respect without raising their voice? You might be closer to that shift than you think. Stay with me, and let's explore the power of silence together. A quiet force, the kind that doesn't need to speak loudly to be heard. Machiavelli didn't write to calm your soul. He wrote to sharpen your mind. In his world, a prince who is not feared is not safe. But the Stoics, with their infinite wisdom, would clarify this: fear must be earned not through violence or aggression, but through restraint. The most commanding presence in the room is not the one who shouts the loudest, but the one who stays unreadable. Why? Because in a world filled with noise, the person who remains silent grabs attention not through performance but through caution. They don't need to speak. They need to be watched. People aren't waiting for you to speak. They are watching because they don't know what you'll do next. That's the essence of influence. When your silence becomes more powerful than their shouting, it's time to take a closer look at your life. How often were your words ignored until you withheld them? How many people only returned after your absence had spoken louder than your presence ever could? How many boundaries were respected only after you enforced them with distance, not with a discussion? This isn't mere coincidence. It's the result of playing the wrong game. While you were seeking harmony, others were calculating their leverage. While you were offering explanations, they were taking notes. While you were forgiving without hesitation, they were testing how much they could take before you finally walked away. You were sincere. They were strategic. The Stoics would have seen this coming. Marcus Aurelius understood that people act based on their own impressions, not your intentions. Epictetus reminded us that true power lies in our response, not in the actions of others. Once someone realizes that you won't raise your voice, won't threaten, won't beg, they begin to assume they can press further without consequence. And that's when the dynamic shifts, because once they realize that you will never escalate, they will do it first. Why? Because the one who seems harmless, the one who doesn't react, becomes the one everyone expects to yield. But everything changes the moment your restraint becomes difficult to read. When you stop trying to explain yourself and instead choose silence over justification, the entire power structure shifts. Suddenly they flinch before they speak. They hesitate before challenging you. They even rehearse their tone before addressing you. Why? Because now you are no longer reacting, you are observing. Your lack of reaction forces them to confront the unknown. And people don't fear noise. They fear the potential of what might come next. They fear what they cannot predict. So when you stay composed, when you withhold your energy, instead of desperately trying to prove a point, you place the burden of interpretation on them. They begin to wonder, does your silence mean that you know something they don't? That's when true power begins to emerge. The silent authority embrace the unreadable power within. As we discussed before, when you stop reacting to every provocation, you begin to shift the balance of power in the room. Your silence, rather than your words, speaks volumes. Now let's dive deeper into the art of being unreadable. The kind of dominance that isn't loud, but undeniable. Imagine this: if your pause means a decision, if your exit means a conclusion, the more they cannot name your state, the more they begin to tread lightly around you. This is the quiet dominance of the Stoic path. It doesn't come from aggression, nor does it rely on explanations. It is the art of remaining unmoved by every attempt to provoke your emotion. When others try to stir, you don't give in. When they expect clarity, offer calm instead. When they seek to define you, leave them with only questions. Because here's the truth: the man who needs no defense doesn't claim authority through words. His authority is confirmed in the silence that follows him. It's not the loudest voice that commands respect. It's the one who remains unshaken, standing in quiet power. And that power, though subtle, is undeniable. To be truly dangerous isn't to be reckless. It's to be unreadable. This principle was something Machiavelli understood well. He knew that once others can predict your reactions, they begin to write your story. They no longer wait for your words, they expect them. They no longer respect your position, they maneuver around it. But if they cannot read you, if they can't grasp your rhythm, they hesitate, they calculate, they begin to fear the unknown. We've been taught all our lives to be understood first, to be liked, to be kind. But what if we reversed the order? What if being quietly feared leads to something even deeper than affection? What if it leads to reverence, not through threat or noise, but through silence, through your refusal to react, to bleed on command? The man who enters a room with a smile may be welcomed, but the man who enters without the need to speak becomes something else entirely. He becomes presence. And presence doesn't fade when the words stop. It lingers in thought, in memory. Machiavelli never relied on brute force before first winning through perception. In a world filled with illusions, the battle is rarely about who you are. It's about what they believe you are capable of. And you don't need to be a force of danger to command respect. You only need to be perceived as one. And that perception isn't built through noise, but through carefully managing visibility, energy, and silence. There's one law in every room: people fear what they don't understand, and they respect what they fear. Step one is never to reveal your full hand. In a world where the loudest often rush to prove themselves, resist that temptation. The boastful expose their ambitions. The reactive expose their triggers. The insecure expose their need for validation. The more they speak, the more they map themselves out. The more they explain, the more they leave themselves open to replacement. Machiavelli taught opacity, not transparency. He understood that the silent person attracts more attention than the one desperate to be heard. Say little. Speak slowly. Let your intentions remain undefined, not to deceive, but to command interpretation. When others must guess where you stand, they tread carefully. When they cannot define you, they obsess over you. In stillness, you become the variable no one can solve. You are the mystery that no one can crack. Step 2 is refusing to defend yourself. Refuse to explain. The Stoic sage doesn't justify his path to every passerby. When criticized, he listens. When misjudged, he observes. But he doesn't rush to make others comfortable. Why? Because nothing disarms your strength faster than the desperate need to explain yourself. And remember, the more you explain, the more they see your vulnerabilities. The less you react, the more they'll begin to question their assumptions about you. The Stoic man doesn't have to prove anything. His presence does all the talking. So take a step back. The less you say, the more you become a figure that others must reckon with, whether they want to or not. Mastering the quiet strength. The true art of commanding respect. We've explored the power of silence, of remaining unreadable, and of mastering the subtle dynamics of control. Now let's dive deeper into how you can protect that quiet strength, ensuring that no one can manipulate or control you through your reactions. When you explain yourself to those who seek to provoke you, fall into a trap. If you explain your silence, you make it seem like a sign of discomfort. If you defend your choices, you validate their accusations. Imagine Machiavelli standing before you, nodding quietly, perhaps offering a faint smile. He wouldn't say a word more. He would understand that in your restraint you preserve the one thing people fear more than power: mystery. You cannot be manipulated if you are not emotionally accessible. You cannot be controlled if you do not react as expected. This is how the Stoic wins, by remaining undisturbed internally regardless of what is thrown at him. It's a mastery of self-discipline, of emotional autonomy. Now let's move on to Step 3. Be inconsistent with your expression. Never allow others to predict your warmth. People fear what contradicts itself. This is something Machiavelli knew all too well. He would praise a man one day only to replace him the next. He would laugh with you over wine and disappear without a word. He would show generosity but never let that kindness become a routine. Why? Because stability breeds entitlement. The man who is kind one day and unreadable the next forces others to remain respectful. They fear offending the version of you they have not yet met. This is not cruelty. It is strategy. It is the Stoics' version of self-governance, a controlled inconsistency that preserves your sovereignty. Your silence becomes a force that keeps others on edge, never quite sure how far they can reach. Step 4 is all about remaining composed in the presence of chaos. The most unnerving force in any storm is the person who refuses to be moved. When others gossip, you stay still. When they shout, you blink slowly. When they panic, you breathe deeper. When they insult you, let your smile tighten, not with sarcasm, but with quiet power. This doesn't mean you are unaffected. It means your mind is too disciplined to be moved by temporary noise. If they cannot shake you, they cannot move you. And if they cannot move you, they begin to fear what you might choose to move next. Stillness becomes your most refined form of intimidation. It's not passive. It's the mastery of timing and purpose. Machiavelli would never speak to win arguments. He would speak only once at the right moment, with precision. Because when every word matters, few are needed. And when no one knows what you'll say next, they start adjusting their behavior before you even speak. This isn't just communication. This is control. When others think of power, they often picture dominance. When they think of fear, they think of violence. But Machiavelli saw it differently. He understood that true power doesn't roar. It resonates. It stays. The most feared men in history were not those who did the most, but those who did the least and were still felt the most. Now let's speak plainly. In the absence of fear, people test you. They overstep. They speak over you. They ask more than they give. They assume you will always be there. Why? Because they do not associate your presence with weight. You are kind. You are predictable. You are safe. But in the world that Machiavelli studied, those traits are not virtues. They are invitations. Invitations to be disrespected. So what does a true threat look like in practice? It's not rage. It's not revenge. It's not the need to prove anything. A true threat is quiet. It's saying nothing after being dismissed. It's remaining calm when rumors rise. It's becoming unreadable when everyone expects you to react. It's stepping away without needing to be asked. And when you leave, the weight of your absence speaks louder than anything you could ever say. In the stillness of your departure, people will feel the gravity of your presence long after you're gone. This is the true power of silence. This is the art of being unreadable. The power of silence creating an unforgettable presence. Earlier, we explored how your absence can speak louder than words, how silence becomes a force when you choose restraint over reaction. Now let's dive deeper into the impact of detachment, how stepping back can lead to a power that doesn't need to be announced, but instead simply felt. When you detach, when you stop chasing, when you no longer fill the space with explanations or emotions, something extraordinary happens. Your absence becomes a mirror. People begin to see themselves in it. They wonder, why is he silent? What did I do? What changed? And suddenly, without your attention, they start to question their worth. They no longer feel certain about their role in your life. This uncertainty forces them to reflect, to recalibrate. But here's the key. This isn't manipulation. This is moral discipline. It's what the Stoics would call living with intentional detachment. You're not withholding to punish anyone. You are withholding because you've realized your energy is too precious to trade for temporary peace or fleeting approval. And when your presence is earned, not given, it becomes invaluable. Just like Machiavelli understood, you don't need armies to command fear. You need silence. You need distance. You need to become the unknown. When people cannot predict your next move, they have two options. They either retreat or they try to earn your favor again. And in both cases, they are serving your rule. So walk as if your absence matters. Withhold as if your energy is precious. Remain unreadable, not to confuse others, but to master yourself. Let people feel your silence more than your words. Let them respect your restraint more than your reaction. Let them remember you not as someone they controlled, but as someone they never quite figured out. That is how you earn reverence. That is how you rule quietly. That is how you live like a Stoic in a Machiavellian world. Let's now move to a powerful lesson. Build the wolf, kill the dog. There's a reason why the call to kill the dog resonates so deeply. It's not just a metaphor. It's a reflection of how many people move through the world. They are loyal even when betrayed, kind even when mocked, obedient even when dismissed. That's the nature of the emotional dog, always seeking approval, always offering softness, even when met with indifference. But Machiavelli never praised blind obedience without discernment. He demanded the wolf, and the wolf, unlike the dog, does not bark. The wolf watches. He waits. And when he moves, no one is ready. To walk this path, you must unlearn the need to explain yourself. You must resist the urge to beg for clarity. The wolf doesn't need to explain. The wolf calculates. He withholds. His power lies not in how much he says, but in how much others feel in his silence. There's a reason why the most unforgettable people are often the quietest, not because they lack a voice, but because they have mastered restraint. The irony is striking. Loud people are remembered only while they are loud, but those who remain still linger long after they leave, because the mind cannot stop replaying what it cannot understand. Why didn't he speak? Was he judging us? Was he waiting for something? When there is no closure, the mind keeps the file open forever, rereading it. That's where tension is born, not from action, but from the suggestion of what might be. You don't need to dominate a room with words. Power is not about volume. It's about presence. It's signaled in your posture, in your silence, in your refusal to compete for attention. While others are scrambling for the spotlight, you, without asking for it, become the one others cannot ignore. And that is how you command true respect. Mastering the silent wolf habits that command respect. In our previous sections, we explored the immense power of silence and restraint. Now let's delve into how you can build those quiet yet commanding habits that will help you become a force to be reckoned with, just like the silent wolf. Machiavelli would never raise his voice. He would observe. He would let others reveal themselves first, and then, without needing to explain a single thing, he would command the room through the weight of what he withheld. That is how you stop being background noise and start becoming a legend. But how do you build this commanding presence? It starts with daily training, the silent training of the wolf. If you seek to become someone who commands fear and respect without ever raising your voice, you must begin not with speeches, but with your habits. Power isn't something you perform. It's something you become through consistent discipline. And discipline doesn't begin on a stage. It begins in the quiet, unnoticed corners of your day. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He didn't just act powerful. He trained for it daily, silently. The first habit to cultivate is restraint. Never be the first to react. When someone tries to provoke you, offends you, or tests your boundaries, they are not seeking clarity. They are testing your stillness. Most people rush to defend themselves. They try to prove their dignity, get the last word. But the person who waits, the one who allows the dust to settle before taking action, becomes the one whose next move everyone fears. A true Stoic doesn't respond out of impulse. He pauses, chooses his actions with careful thought, because the first to speak is often the weakest. The one who holds the pause forces others to wrestle with their own discomfort. The pause is not uncertainty, it's calculation. And nothing unsettles the ambitious more than being studied. The second habit is austerity in speech. Speak slowly, say less. Leave the moment before it needs you. Most people fill the air with words because they want to be understood, to explain themselves. But the man who doesn't need to be understood forces others to interpret him, and interpretation carries weight. When you speak deliberately and briefly, people begin to wonder, was that a sign of agreement or a warning? Why did he leave before the room settled? Why didn't he smile back in that wondering you remain alive in their thoughts long after you've left the room? Machiavelli never allowed himself to be fully known. He didn't seek connection. He cultivated tension, and it was that tension that made him unforgettable. The third habit is learning how absence becomes presence. You must withdraw to reinforce your impact. The man who is always available becomes like furniture, expected and unremarkable. The man who appears and disappears with purpose, on the other hand, becomes a force. You must leave the conversation while they still want more. Exit the meeting while your words are still echoing. Do not let your presence become routine. Let it become remembered. A dog is always there, loyal and accessible, but a wolf vanishes, and in vanishing commands curiosity. This is how you teach others to feel your absence more than your presence. The fourth habit is firmness without explanation. When you say no, do not explain. When you change direction, do not defend. When you walk away, do not leave the door half open. The need to justify your actions is the first sign of lost power. Machiavelli knew this well. Every explanation you offer is an invitation for someone to argue with you. But a man who simply acts without apology, without emotional wrapping, becomes unshakable. The moment you begin to defend yourself, you stop leading. You begin negotiating. And a true threat does not negotiate. He decides. His decisions stand alone without the need for justification. The final habit is emotional neutrality. Not apathy, but the discipline of remaining calmly centered in the face of social testing. You will be poked, challenged, and tested. People will try to provoke you with humor, flirtation, disrespect, or even false praise. But when you remain unmoved, when you refuse to react emotionally, you force them into a position of assumption. And in that assumption, they reveal more about themselves than they discover about you. The unreadable man becomes the mirror that others fear to face. He doesn't react. He simply smiles slightly, observing without judgment. That is how you become a presence so potent that others can't help but notice and never forget. By embodying these habits daily, you begin to train yourself to be the silent force that commands respect without uttering a single word. The silent strength, mastering presence and influence. As we've explored before, presence is not about how loud you speak, but how much weight you carry in silence. Now let's dive deeper into how to master the silent strength that commands attention without ever having to shout. Step back rather than step in. The more they try to decipher you, the more their own certainties begin to collapse. This is the essence of what Machiavelli understood. He trained like a warrior, with his blade mastering posture, silence, and ritual. His presence whispered one unshakable truth. You do not know what I am capable of, and you never will. But if you cross me, you might find out. That is not a threat. That is a promise written in restraint. It's the kind of power that doesn't need to be declared because it is silently understood. If you wish to walk through this world without shouting yet still be heard, begin with your habits. Become difficult to read, slow to react, sparse with words, strategic, with appearances firm without justification, and calm in all things. Not because you lack feeling, but because you command yourself first. This is the Stoic path to influence, not by claiming power, but by becoming the kind of person who no longer needs to. Mastering silent presence. There's a fine line between being a mystery and being dismissed, between silence that commands the room and silence that fades into it. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. His brilliance was not simply in choosing fear over respect, but in blending both so precisely that when he said nothing, his name still lingered in the minds of those present. Fear without respect provokes resistance. People may comply with your presence, but underneath they begin to plot your absence. They obey out of pressure, not recognition. That kind of power, though loud, is temporary. On the other hand, respect without fear breeds comfort. People trust you, they praise your skill, but eventually they assume too much. They talk over you, they stop watching what they say. And once they stop paying attention, they start underestimating you. The solution is tension, not the tension born from chaos or conflict, but the kind that hangs in the air when someone is deeply composed yet unreadable. You are kind but not soft, calm but never passive. You are not there to entertain. You are there to be remembered. The Stoic cultivates this through consistency in principle and restraint in emotion. You don't need to be warm to be wise. You don't need to explain to be understood. Offer clarity in one moment, then vanish. End the argument with a single phrase, then step out of reach. Let others dwell on your absence. Let them feel the cost of not having you near. This is how your silence gains weight, not because you withheld out of spite, but because you never offered yourself without purpose. Machiavelli never begged to be seen. He never warned when he would leave. Instead, he trained people to feel the shift when he withdrew. Praise was met with a simple nod. Presence was given sparingly. And when he left, the room felt colder. This is how you rule, not by declaring dominance, but by mastering absence. The kind of absence that lingers like the loss of something priceless. The kind that leaves others walking lighter simply because they remember how heavy your silence once was. Creating obsession. Through distance, what truly captivates the mind is not what is always present, but what is briefly near and then gone. Obsession is not born from availability. It grows in the space between contact and absence. The absence of your presence creates a void that people can't help but fill with thoughts of you. When you withhold, when you create that space, you become something people can't stop thinking about. It's in that distance that they begin to wonder, question, and most importantly, desire. And that desire cultivated in your absence becomes a silent form of power that no one can ignore. By mastering the art of presence and absence, you create a subtle yet unshakable influence that others feel long after you've left the room. 0024. 40 completion. People do not dwell on what they fully possess. They become consumed by what once felt within reach but remained untouchable. That is how you become unforgettable. By offering just enough to stir the waters and then stepping back into stillness. You make eye contact once. You speak one sentence that cuts deeper than it should. You hold a posture that unsettles the chaotic. Then without a word you disappear. And in that absence you leave them circling back, not because you asked them to, but because they, Juzu 25:17, never found closure. The door was left slightly ajar. The conversation never truly ended, and so they return again and again to finish what was never meant to be finished. The first strategy is restraint through unpredictability. While others rush to reveal themselves, you offer very little. You speak slowly. You smile less. You give only what is essential. This contrast forces people to recalibrate. They lower their voice. They measure their words. They begin responding not to your commands, but to your gravity. They feel it and they adjust. The second strategy is Iro Ijiro 2600 projection. People will assign you labels. Intense, cold, mysterious. Let them. Once they begin imagining who you are, they begin investing in that image. They examine your silences. They fill the gaps with stories. And now their assumptions have become your echo. Do not correct them. Their own invention becomes their obsession. The third strategy is to exit just before they are ready. You end the dialogue one breath too soon. You walk away while they are still composing their response. You let your silence stretch 1 second longer, warm Zuzuo 26:39 than comfort allows. That incomp completion becomes a loop they cannot resolve. And in that loop, your presence deepens. But the final and most essential strategy is sovereignty of the inner world. When they ask what drives you, offer precision wrapped in mystery. When they ask what you want, respond with clarity veiled in calm. You are not hiding, you are guarding. Because the moment others can map your inner world, they begin to scheme around it. But when your motives are not offered, they stop trying to manage you and begin to, Zaza 0, 27:15, respect your depth. This is where tactics become transformation. Silence is no longer a method. It becomes your nature. You are not withholding to provoke. You are silent because you have mastered what matters. Machiavelli's power was not in his threats. It was in the uncertainty he left behind. His final form was not rage, it was discipline, not to be feared for his actions, but for his potential. The true Stoic ruler is not obeyed because he commands. He is obeyed because others walk differently in his Euro 27:52 presence, just in case he is watching. And when they finally realize they can't define you, they stop trying to control you. They step back. They tread lighter because what they can't predict, they begin to respect. Comment, silent, strength. Subscribe if this spoke to you and prepare for what comes.